Welcoming you back to another edition of the Edge podcast. Publisher Brenden Slaughter, joined by KGO radio host and BeaversEdge writer TJ Mathewson here for the Edge podcast. We're back following Oregon State's stunning 38-34 win. We'll obviously be getting into that game and obviously talking about the bowl game and everything else signing day that's coming up for Oregon State football. But as of recording this podcast, we have some breaking news to share, and we have been able to confirm that Oregon State quarterback Chance Nolan has entered the transfer portal. Boom! TJ, talk about some news to kick off that podcast today. We were moments away from recording before the news broke. Had to put a quick little stop on that, and now we're back and we're ready to talk about this. But whew, I feel like I'm still coming down off that, TJ. That was quite the bit of news.
And here we are recording this on a Thursday. We almost recorded this podcast yesterday on a Wednesday, and we would have completely missed it. After everything that has happened down the course of the season, surprised, yes, but it also kind of makes sense that we didn't see Chance Nolan in the final third of the season when we expected a guy who had a neck strain. I guess that's as much information as we got. And then a concussion on top of it to not get cleared, and you know, the vagueness we got from the coaching staff. Oh, he's limited. Oh, he's not starting this week, yada, yada. And I think someone asked in the press conference last week, it's safe to assume or 2 weeks ago, it's just safe to assume Ben is your starter the next 2 weeks. And he said, yes.
Right.
Now, here is the fun part, because of college athletics and the secrecy in it. We get to play the speculation game. Was he holding himself out? Did he not feel healthy? Was he holding himself out because he knew he was going to transfer, didn't like how the medical process went through? Did he not see himself getting the opportunity to be the starting quarterback here next year? There's a whole lot of layers to this, Brenden, that you know, we could go any which way with this. I guess if I'm going to say it, I don't know how he looks at the quarterback room and thinks that he wouldn't get a chance to start here next year. I think we both agree. We thought he was the best option throughout the season and into next season as well. It's a little puzzling on that part for Chance Nolan to put his name in the portal.
There's a lot of layers, like you said. You hit on some great points, TJ. I think, you know, we've seen it before. I think of a defensive lineman a couple years ago who ended up at Michigan. He wasn't, you know, medically cleared, I don't think, to play here. And, you know, that's a piece of it. Like you said, a piece of it maybe is he wanted to come back. The coaching staff felt comfortable with Ben. That rubbed him the wrong way. We've seen that happen before. I think there are numerous layers to this. And then punctuated, TJ, like you said, we never saw him. Not once.
Nope.
Not supporting his teammates, not on the sidelines, not, you know, passing.
Was not on the sideline for Saturday's game. He was not there.
Never. And as far as I know, TJ, he wasn't on the sideline any game post-Utah. We never saw him. He was the ghost of Chance Nolan. So this, in that regard, makes a lot more sense. But here's the thing. I just wrote the story this morning, TJ, diving into Oregon State's top 10 offensive PFF graded players this year. He only played to the Utah game. Chance Nolan, number 5, right? So, you know, again, not to emphasize your point even more, but, you know, I understand that Ben won some games as a starter. To me, it was still pretty clear cut that if he came back, he would kind of be and was healthy, would be the leader in that room, for the simple fact that he's capable of throwing for more than 200 yards in a game consistently. So in that respect, TJ, Oregon State really, really, really needs some quarterback help now, because respectfully, I don't think the answer is either one of the true freshmen redshirting and Dom Montiel or Travis Throckmorton. And, you know, while Aiden Childs looks like the future, how often do we see an 18-year-old start at a Power 5 program, let alone a Power 5 program coming off a 9-win season? So, you know, BeaversEdge, we've been teasing all week about the transfer portal quarterback story that we're going to be doing. That will be up at the same time as this podcast on Friday, so make sure to check that out. But yeah, TJ, like this underscores so much more how, like, 24 hours ago, it was, it'd be really good if they got a transfer portal quarterback. Now it's, you can't do anything but if you want to have a successful season next year. Am I wrong? Am I overselling it a bit?
I don't think you're wrong at all. I mean, we watched these other guys play. There's going to be some development there. Those guys
Sure.
probably will get better as they, go from true freshmen stepping on campus to
Right.
sophomores on campus or redshirt,
And Ben
however
could
they
improve
want to address it next year. Ben,
And Ben
yes,
could
Ben could
improve.
also improve. And
could.
Aiden Childs could walk on campus and wow everybody in fall camp. That's great.
True.
But that's all speculation. That's all of us saying, oh, this could happen.
Right.
This could happen. Some guy could look really great. And that's a long time away from now. But here's the plain fact right now. Ben has not shown you that with another good, I would say good, quarterback in the room, what you want, you expect with a team this good in a Power 5 program, that he would start over him. There just isn't that there. And it's puzzling to think was the relationship with the other quarterbacks, did that turn Chance off of
maybe things
thinking, maybe Jonathan, maybe throughout a spring of competition, Jonathan might like Ben better, a better chance, a better fit to the offense than me.
Right.
So I think my talents might be better off used elsewhere, because I know he had a bad 5 quarters with interceptions, but I thought this offense really did with the 3 full games we saw for Chance Nolan. I really thought it fit his strengths well.
Yeah,
I
thought so too.
A strong running game, play action passes, throwing deep, utilizing his legs a little bit. Those are all things Chance Nolan does pretty well.
Right.
In game time. And now that's not there. And now you're going to enter bidding wars for quarterbacks. That you're going to have, if you want a good quarterback to come here, you're going to have to bid for one. That's just how it is nowadays. People might not like that. But that's how it also was, before this became all legal. You just, left it in a Target shopping bag out on the corner on the street. So
TJ,
it's going to be something. It's going to be one thing. There's all this the talk about morals, and we don't do this here at Oregon State. We're not going to go into a bidding war for a player, and we're going to respect the institution and the school. Well, here's
antiquated thinking.
A hard fact here. Here's a hard fact here. If you don't do that, you are not going to get the quarterback you want in the portal, and those guys left in your room are going to be who you get.
Right.
And I don't know, and that's up to you whether you think that's okay or not.
Right. And, honestly, TJ, the whole time you said all that, there's only one thing that I could hear in my head. I'm going to go back to very underrated Tom Cruise movie, Jerry Maguire, when it's show me the money, show me the money. And, as like you said, it may not be what, the true college football fans want to see in their sport. But it's to the point now, TJ, where we're seeing you're getting left behind if you're not competitive. And I think that's why we're seeing the Damnation Collective kind of start to take off for Oregon State. They're trying to get as much NIL help as possible because, how much different would this season have been? Let's play that what-if game. If JT Daniels had been at quarterback, right? Maybe better, maybe worse, maybe the same, who knows? But still, you didn't get him because supposedly, and again, we don't have any diehard sources, but supposedly you didn't meet his asking price. So moving forward, there are some names and some very good names in the transfer portal. TJ, Jonathan Smith and Brian Lindgren have to stake their reputation on this offseason and landing a quarterback. Like, I feel like everything that's been positive and gained in this program this year can take a step back if you continue to have problems at the most important position on the field. Do you agree?
When your head coach and offensive coordinator are both former quarterbacks, absolutely. Yep. Absolutely. So there's going to be that to think of. And we hear about all these dynamics with, the locker room and stuff. And, what's it going to be like if one guy's out here making $300,000 and the school paid the collective paid him to come here while everyone else doesn't quite get that amount. Sure. Well, maybe that's something you're just going to have to roll the dice with. To be honest.
Deal with it to competitive to win.
You can't. Yeah, and the JT Daniels thing this year. I mean, JT Daniels wasn't even that good this year, to be honest.
True.
But the talent, we know that he was talented, right?
Right.
So if an equal talent and a potentially better result, Oregon State's in a New Year's Six Bowl probably this year, based on where they're sitting right now.
Yes.
They would be in that top 12, I think, at
Yeah.
this point. And
Yeah, I mean, you either
say,
beat
well,
UW or
would be
yeah.
making a New Year's Six worth the investment at quarterback?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think
For your
so.
bowl
I think
payout,
so.
without question. Yeah, for the payout that you get for a bowl game, it's without question. I mean, every bowl obviously goes up higher in tiers and money. And when you think like, oh yeah, the Alamo Bowl payout's like 8 million. That's the Alamo Bowl, right? And then they kind of all start to go down, and then obviously the BCS New Year's Six are even more than that, TJ. But this still like I have this feeling of just kind of not surprised, but just kind of like, how did none of us, and maybe some did, but how did none of us like peg this? And I guess even still, like I caught myself a bit kind of off guard because everything I've known about Chance, we talked to him the last couple years. TJ, you've been around now, you've talked to him. This just really surprises me for a guy that we knew was endeared with his teammates. His teammates loved him. He really said all the right things in the media, availabilities and whatnot. I think back to, the last time I believe it was the last time we saw him in the post game was like either after the non-conference game or after USC. I can't quite remember. And, same Chance Nolan that I thought was really well spoken, a great kind of QB1, so to speak. And, obviously, like you said, it wasn't perfect. He, had those couple off games earlier this year, but that doesn't change my opinion that I guarantee he would have thrown for more than 87 yards against Washington. And I know he would have thrown for more than 67 against Oregon. I get it. You won one of those games, but I still don't think that's a recipe for long-term success. And like you said, maybe, just maybe with the defense you have this year, you'd be in a New Year's Six bowl right now. You'd be in Washington's spot, and Washington would be in your spot. You know what I mean?
Say you had good quarterback play. You could be 11-1.
Say you had Penix.
To be honest,
say you had Penix.
You could be. If you had Michael Penix, they'd be 11. They would be 11-1 right now. I don't even think that's really a stretch.
And was Michael Penix?
Would you take that? What was the deal that UW had to cut Michael Penix? Do you know?
Well, and that was the thing is when Michael Penix went to UW, it was a solid transfer, TJ, but it wasn't like, oh my gosh, college football is shaking because Michael Penix is leaving Indiana, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Indiana to go to UW.
Yeah.
And again, that tells me right away, TJ, there are dudes out there, and Oregon State, in my opinion, again, we weren't on the recruiting trail, but from what we've been able to gather together and know now, it kind of seems like last year they rolled the dice in the wrong way and said, well, we're not really about that life. So so on and so forth. Maybe it's a bigger number than we'd like. We feel good about the guys we recruited. Maybe under normal circumstance, Chance Nolan doesn't get hurt. Maybe things do work in your favor, but they didn't. And you close the year with, and again, I think it speaks even more to Oregon State's impressive coaching and how great of a coach Jonathan Smith is. But TJ, what for the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season, your opponents really knew that if they forced you to stop, or forced you not to run, which again, easier said than done. Not even Oregon could do it. Really, only UW could do it during that stretch. But if they could force you not to run and force you to beat you with Ben's arm, probably weren't going to win. And UW banked on that, and that's how they turned it around in the second half, along with Ben being errant and missing some passes. And then Oregon, I look at that equally as an Oregon collapse. Oregon should have put 10 guys in the box, 9 guys in the box, and said,
right,
beat us, Ben. But Oregon was too busy, tripping all over themselves. Kenny Dillingham was already down in Tempe, probably. Oregon kind of they faltered at the end of that one. But all jokes aside, TJ, just what were your kind of final thoughts on this? And I guess just how important do you think it is now that they go land a true difference maker in the portal?
So there's all this worry about where Oregon State's future is when it comes to the conference and the Pac-12, and are the Beavers going to end up in the Mountain West if everyone else leaves the Pac-12, right, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I don't think that's going to happen. However, if we look at all these other schools that would get poached to bigger conferences, the Big 12, the Big 10, et cetera, other places where they can go expand, make a lot of money, and then you hear that a Washington State and Oregon State are left behind.
Right.
There's a reason those other schools are coveted and these ones are not as much. The the money and the funding, et cetera, and the real just investment in what is really valuable, college football, is not in the same level of the other programs.
Right.
And I feel like this is a spot where you come out as a program and you have that investment in a position, and you need to be like, okay, we need to show everyone that we're invested in this. We are invested in winning football games. We are invested in doing what is necessary to benefit the university, the other sports, by making this football program great.
Right.
And that's what you need to do with the quarterback. That's literally what that does. It all trickles down.
Right.
Starting with, getting that good quarterback, an investment there, and it pays off in so many ways.
Yeah, and I don't mean to say this all as like, the Titanic is coming for Oregon State football and all those things. This is a problem that's going to ail you in the offseason. It doesn't affect the bowl game. I really don't, the fact that Chance has been a ghost for the last 7-8 weeks, fine, right? It doesn't affect Oregon State's bowl game whatsoever. I think, Ben's endeared as the starter right now. He's done a good enough job at piloting the ship. It's like, again, TJ, they gave him the keys to a $200,000 Bentley. He's got a couple dings in it, but you're like, well, what was the other choice? Kind of a thing.
It's been running along fine.
Yeah. So
get the joke, but boom.
Right. So it's like I just don't know exactly like how critical you can be of a guy who lost one game, right, as a starting quarterback, and I get that. But I'm just looking at the numbers and I'm like, what if Oregon State can't run the ball that well every single season, or, doesn't have the horses on the offensive line like that every single season? Or better yet, TJ, doesn't boast an awesome experienced defense like we have this season. And they covered up some of the warts that the offense had this year. So, I think now moving forward after the bowl game, and again, the bowl game we're going to get into potentially going to be against a big time opponent. I think this is another bit of a showcase to kind of show that, hey, we got a good program here. We're rising up, and we're just a quarterback away. And again, I don't mean to do this to take anything away from, Aiden Childs and Travis Throckmorton specifically, as those guys haven't gotten a chance to show us what they can do. But based on what I saw from Travis, this spring and fall, or excuse me, this fall, and then, what we know about Aiden coming in, it's not likely they're going to be ready to seize the starting quarterback job right away. So I look at Oregon State needing to go out and find a difference maker for 1 or 2 years position.
So where the boosters sit there and look at it, it's like, okay, there's something that we need to do. That is what should be going on. But yes. I don't know. That's really up to the collective and the football program to figure that out.
No doubt. And like TJ said, it's going to be it's almost like you need a calling all Oregon State alums, like a public PSA. I mean, they came together to get the stadium built, TJ, when they really needed that. You got a big time donation a year ago that came in anonymously in the form of $50 million to finish the stadium. So then a year later, maybe you say, hey, we won 9 games that you donated. Can you give us a little more?
A person who has $50 million sitting around almost certainly has enough to pay for a quarterback.
So again, that was an anonymous donor. Maybe it was a tax write-off. Who knows? But regardless, that tells me there's some very wealthy Oregon State boosters out there. So get on it. But it's going to be interesting to see exactly how all that shakes out, because like TJ said, for an abundance and variety of reasons, that is what the program needs to take the next level. So again, in case you're just joining us and you heard TJ and I babble for, however long it's been now, Oregon State quarterback Chance Nolan has officially put his name into the transfer portal. BeaversEdge.com has learned. We've been able to independently confirm that he will enter the transfer portal. So that leaves, as of now, TJ, let me just pull it up here. That leaves, because Tristan Gebbia will obviously be out of eligibility at the end of this season. So that leaves, count them, 2 scholarship quarterbacks in Ben and Travis Throckmorton, currently with a third in Aiden Childs obviously coming in. That's a thin room, man. That's razor thin. That is, yeah. I mean, it's usually 4 or 5, right? You would think. Right.
So
yeah. It's thin, so it's going to be really interesting. Yeah, it's fascinating.
Good,
It's gonna be really
good thing we procrastinated the podcast, Brenden. Good thinking. Good
no.
thinking ahead on your part.
Hey man, I told you yesterday. I'm like, I've got a gut feeling, just like this inner gut feeling that some. I thought it was more bowl game, which actually came anyway, and we'll get into that momentarily. But no, I just kind of had a gut feeling there's going to be some breaking news, and nevertheless, the Oregon State starting quarterback, who we thought would be their starting quarterback at the beginning of the year for multiple years, is now in the wind. So definitely, again, wishing Chance Nolan all the best luck in his future endeavors. Great kid. Love talking to him. Remember when he first committed here. But Oregon State, there's a massive hole now. So a lot to keep tabs on. Beaver's Edge will be all over it. Make sure to stay locked there as we'll have, like I said earlier, a transfer portal quarterback piece coming up. And Dylan and I will obviously be getting into the nitty gritty of where they'll be looking on the recruiting trail moving forward. But let's go to some positive talk now, TJ. You bring up the green water bottle, so I guess it's a perfect transition to the Civil War. Oregon State, I mean, now that we got the vegetables out of the way and the breaking Chance Nolan news, let's just sit back and marvel, TJ. Was that the greatest college football comeback you've ever seen? I mean, for me, it's hands down.
It's up there.
For me, it's hands down.
It's up there,
I've seen
man.
in person. I've seen in person.
Yeah, that I've seen in person, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it just the fact you can go down 31-10, not throw another pass and still win. Writing that
incredible.
Out. You hand that to someone and show them. It's like, well, that doesn't seem possible, but it was. If you just you took every clip of every snap of the game and you watched the Oregon State offensive line fire off on the Oregon State defensive line, you'd watch like, oh, they're getting pushed out of the screen. Yeah, okay. So, yeah, it was just unbelievable. I think, what did they run? 14 straight runs to score 21 unanswered points.
Yeah.
And it wasn't all just that. Oregon helped out with, a failed fourth down in their own territory and then dropping a punt at their own 2-yard line. Just two awful mistakes by Oregon. But regardless, the Beavers managed to almost lose the game themselves.
Right.
And then simultaneously come back and win it. Something they haven't done this year when they've really shot themselves in the foot. They haven't had the horses, a.k.a. the quarterback, to bring them back in the game this year. But they didn't even need a quarterback. Somehow, some way, they did not need a quarterback to come back down 21.
Well, let's start with this, TJ. Is it that big of a deficit if the worst Pac-12 officiating calls I've ever seen completely flips the course of the game there late in the first half? Like, again, because Oregon State won the game, I think, and thanks so much that I did not have to turn this into a Pac-12 officials hate piece. But take a step back. I mean, when are we going to say as Pac-12 football fans? And I'm not saying, I think bad calls went both ways. I think Oregon even got some bad calls, and I know, not to say that it all worked out, but I think just Pac-12 officiating, TJ, that was so bad. That play was right in front of where you and I's vantage points were. The line judge that called it ran in from the end zone. Horrible. Absolutely horrible. That's all I'm going to say on it. George Klefkoff, the Pac-12, like I said in my tweet, be better. It was horrible.
He was speaking today. He said something along the lines of the officiating, some of that stuff has just been unacceptable, which is great to hear him say that. But something still needs to be done. Like, really, like, we don't know, like, what does it require? Hiring all new referees, hiring the training system? Like, I don't know. It was just insane. The Beavers probably would have been up 17-7 at that point. Who knows? People talk about momentum. Oh, the momentum all went to Oregon with that. Well, it's like from them doing
did.
What? Because you have but here, think about momentum in this vacuum. You have momentum until what? Until you lose it, based on what?
A play, a couple plays.
There's no basis on losing it or gaining it, right? Oregon State, how did they magically gain momentum down 31-10? Like what? How did the momentum actually swing their way? No, they just started playing better. They didn't throw any interceptions. They didn't fumble the ball. They capitalized on Oregon mistakes. That's how you make momentum.
I mean, if you were to ask me, I'd say, the Damian Martinez, 50-yard run, that changed everything.
It did. And it helped, it helps guys feel better. But, like,
Yeah.
momentum is only really a
Yeah.
thing until it's not, right? There's no
Right.
quantifiable thing. Regardless, though, that did swing the game. The Ducks took full advantage of that. I will give Kenny Dillingham, shout out ASU now, now current ASU head coach, but I thought he called a fantastic game. I thought for the first 2.5 quarters, he was really out coaching Trent Bray, which hasn't happened much this year. But his offense was walking up and down the field without really much resistance at all, carving up that defense. But I will credit Oregon State. They adjusted in that fourth quarter. They were jumping in all those short slant passing lanes that they were abusing early on,
Right.
and really threw off Bo Nix's timing, and were able to hold there on the goal line down at the end of the game.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting at the Reser Stadium press box, folks, because, here I am when Oregon State's down 31-10 being like, the momentum is all green and yellow. TJ walks in, momentum's not a thing. And I'm like, well, so, TJ's been on this, man. So, he's like, what is momentum in college football? And I'm like, you're looking at it, bro. You're looking at it. So it's definitely interesting to see that we kind of have different perspectives on momentum. But, nevertheless, you're right. It completely changed and flipped late. And then obviously Oregon State, it was all coming up orange and black after all coming up green and yellow there for a while. Isaiah Newell comes out of the woodwork to, be a CW hero. Looking back,
look
TJ,
up, I'm like, is that 25? Is that
right.
25? I was like, what?
Looking back, I didn't realize until after the game, just from where our perspective was in the press box, that on that second quarterback sneak, Ben fumbled the ball and then caught it.
Oh, I didn't see that. I didn't even see that.
Yeah, so on that second quarterback sneak, Ben kind of fumbles the ball upwards. He catches it, and then they push him back in. But we couldn't see that from where we were, and I didn't catch it on the replay screen. So quite literally a game of inches across the board, TJ. But they come back. I mean, one of the all-time most just awesome college games to be at. Like I said, I'll tell people for a long time that I was there witnessing that game. You'll be able to do the same thing as you were there too. And I think, we talked about it last week, how it could be a huge springboard for this program. It is, because not only did Oregon State play well, they won their rivalry game. For me, TJ, this was the first time they won this is just my opinion, first time they have won a Civil War that Oregon cared to win since 2007. And that's only because I think Oregon didn't really care that much in 2020. I don't know who did in college football in the Pac-12, to be perfectly honest. Not taking, shots at the guys that were playing, but, I just don't think Oregon was very interested in playing in an empty Reser Stadium. 2016, Oregon was very clearly trying to get Mark Helfrich fired. So I think when you go back to the fact that this was a game that Oregon needed to go to the Pac-12 championship game, Oregon State found a way to knock them out, even though they weren't going to go themselves. And now, as we saw, TJ, and we'll get into here momentarily, we'll probably go to a better bowl game than Oregon. So that's all those factors combined. How much can this, elevate the program and maybe even make this an attractive landing spot for the next quarterback?
Well, I would hope for your sake and the program's sake, that this is a step towards evening this rivalry out, it out a little bit. So you feel confident every time the Ducks come to Reser Stadium, now with the new side, now with a good capacity on it, that you're going to be able to beat the Ducks every time. So I think that's sort of the biggest thing out of that.
It was special.
And
it's true.
You'll never catch them in recruiting, really.
Agreed.
Unless that investment comes in from the outside, from alums and such, they're not going to catch them on that. But on the football field, as long as Jonathan is here.
An Oregon State alum could invent the next Amazon. We're good. They could invent the next Amazon.
They could. They very could. And that would probably be very good. I asked this question before we get into bowls. I know we're running out of time here, but I asked this question on my post-game show. I used the term Mount Rushmore. This game, I think, makes the Mount Rushmore Civil Wars. I don't know where it would rank for you, though. Where is it?
Oh, man. Do we count the ones that I was, not coherent for? Yeah,
you could.
Pretty universally, everybody says 2000's the best, right? And with what was on the line in that game, I disagree. I don't disagree. I was 4 years old at the time, But you talk about Oregon State winning that game. Joey Harrington throws 5 picks. They go to the Fiesta Bowl, most successful season in Oregon State's modern era. Does this have a case, in my opinion, to be number 2? I think it has a case. 98 comes into play there. Obviously, 2007, 2006 come into play. But yeah, I think there's a very strong case, TJ, that when you consider all the factors, everything that was on the line, this is number 2, number 3 in my book. I'm curious, what have people kind of been saying when you were talking to them on the postgame show?
I think it was a consensus 2-3. I think some people were ranking it above 2000.
Wow.
98 was a pretty consensus number 1.
Yeah. It's tough to beat. I mean, that's kind of the game that changed Oregon State football. Again, yours truly was 2, so he really doesn't remember, Ken Symington going around the corner. But obviously, that set Oregon State, up on the trajectory they were to have so much success in the 2000s, including that 2000 season. So it's without a doubt top 5. And then I think a case could be made that depending on the day, depending on, what sports bar argument you're getting into, you might be able to make a claim that this was the best Civil War ever. When you think about the ups and the downs, the peaks and the valleys, and we'll see how Oregon State's season finishes. If they go get a bowl win and get 10 wins, that's going to be in consideration. So like TJ said, we could dive into this game forever. And, if it wasn't for, the breaking Chance Nolan news, we would have talked about it a little bit more. But, just to kind of put a stamp on that, easily one of the most, special football games I've ever got a chance to cover. I mean, the press conference itself was something entertaining. Oregon State, they deserved it. And, it was an incredible comeback. And to be down 31-10 and walk away 38-34 winners, I think is something that every single one of those players be telling their kids about one day, TJ. And that's flat out special. That's what rivalry games are all about. And Oregon State, winners get sprinkles, and sounds like they're going to get their sprinkles in the bowl season, man.
That sounds like it. Where we go? Where are they going bowling, Brenden? Vegas, Alamo. The fact that Alamo is now open, from seeing some reports online that Alamo, Holiday, and the Vegas Bowl all interested, and the Sun Bowl sounds like it's out.
Yes. So basically,
intriguing.
Very intriguing. Per what you said, some reporting that came online yesterday mentioned that the Sun Bowl of those 4 bowls is last in the pecking order. And what was reported was that Oregon State will most likely not be available by the time the Sun Bowl selects and picks. So that tells all y'all at home, the Alamo Bowl is interested in Oregon State, Holiday Bowl is interested in Oregon State, and the Las Vegas Bowl is interested in Oregon State. The Alamo Bowl coming in on the 29th of December. The Holiday Bowl.
That one surprised me.
Yeah.
I was surprised.
Holiday Bowl coming in at the 28th of December, and then the Vegas Bowl checking in December 17th. So Beaver fans, Sunday, you and myself as well, we'll have our postseason destinations. I certainly can't wait. The LA Bowl was the experience of a lifetime last year, despite Oregon State's lackluster results. So I'm excited to go down and hang out with some Beaver fans again and meet some of the BeaversEdgers down there as well. TJ, it's a great time. But yeah, just we got about 5 minutes left here in the podcast. We'll start with you. Of those 3, which do you think would be the most fun, and which do you think is just overall the best bowl? Like, I'm talking like
fun for whom?
Fan experience, player experience, all of it, all the experience of just the fans, players,
that's
alumni.
Tough.
Yeah.
For the team, San Antonio, Alamo Bowl, number 1. Obviously, it's the second-rated bowl in the Pac-12 schedule. I would say major stamp if the Alamo Bowl is selecting you over Oregon, who I know played in there last year, select them over Utah as well. Those are the 2 teams you're competing with for that spot. That is huge if you're getting selected over that. So, TV purposes, I think that one's the best. If we look at the other bowls, I have all the bowls here on a nice printed out sheet right here.
Nice.
Fun for me to watch, and for the fans, I think it's Vegas. It's got to be Vegas. The matchup, I think, is the best.
SEC.
I would rather face an SEC school than face an ACC school in the Holiday Bowl. Vegas is awesome. I have a lot of fun in Vegas. I think a lot of fans have a lot of fun in Vegas. There's no shortage of hotel rooms. There's no shortage of things to do outside the bowl game. There's an NFL game on Sunday, so you can make an entire weekend out of it. The only negative about the Vegas Bowl is that it's played in the second day of the bowl season on the 17th. So
Right.
that's not ideal. But if your other option is the Holiday Bowl, I mean,
Yeah.
sounds good to me. I mean,
Yeah,
they get to
I
play
mean,
in Petco Park. Petco Park
yeah.
is beautiful, right in the Gaslamp district. And Oregon
Yes.
State's never played there, so I think it would be
Right.
good.
No, that you actually you mentioned it perfectly. Like if you're a Beaver fan, you probably woke up today feeling like $1,000,000 because all those issues that you mentioned, lack of hotel space, tough to get into, those were big. Particularly tough to fly into and the cost of flying for El Paso. So you talk about, the Holiday Bowl is intriguing, like you said, because everything is in that district, whether it's hotels, food, everything will be staged in one area. Vegas, like you said, lots of hotel rooms. Nobody's going to pay an inflated hotel rate in Vegas. No one's going to probably pay an inflated plane ride into Vegas either, just for how, quickly everything's coming in and out of there. But like you said, for notoriety, I think the Alamo is probably still king, just because when Oregon State went there 10 years ago, TJ, and lost to Texas in that game, that was a huge deal. Like it was, I just remember the pageantry of it. It was big time. Like the Alamo Bowl typically in normal years is reserved for the team that loses in the Pac-12 championship game. So I think that would be, unique with that respect. But I don't have a problem with any of them. We were talking about it on Rip City Mornings this morning, and all three bowls sound great to me, TJ. Different reasons for each, but I think Oregon State's got to be thrilled about what they're hearing back.
I think the matchup I'd want to see, I mean, if it's the Alamo Bowl, I want to see them play Texas because I think Texas sounds like the team they would play again. So it'd be a rematch of 10 years ago. That would be cool. But the Vegas Bowl, please put Mike Leach in there. Please. Please do it.
I mean, I saw Ole Miss as an option too. I mean, can you imagine Lane Kiffin versus Jonathan Smith? The SEC
Lane
matchup
Kiffin's
would be
only
awesome.
like 4 hours away from the tarmac he got fired on.
And on that note, TJ knows how to put a bow tie on a podcast.
Regardless, the press conferences would be amazing.
I think the Pac-12 SEC matchup would obviously be king, but again, TJ and I will get into it in next week's edition of the pod because we'll know on Sunday. Again, Beaver fans, stay tuned Sunday and stay tuned to BeaversEdge.com. That's when everything will be released. And as I mentioned, we're also going to have some quarterback news, in the coming days, as well as the Beavers look to really attack that portal and identify some targets coming off the big win over Oregon. So, TJ, awesome podcast this week, man. Definitely glad we held off for a day. It worked out quite well in our favor. And I'm amped up to talk to you next week when we know the bowl location. We can kind of dive into what matchup this is going to be. And then obviously talk signing day, which is right around the corner on the 21st. And then obviously leading into this next football season.
Sounds good to me, man.
All right, well, that's going to do it for this edition of the Edge podcast. Big thanks to TJ Mathewson for jumping on with us, as always. We'll be back next week previewing Oregon State's bowl matchup and previewing signing day. Thanks for watching this edition of the Edge podcast.